But I am so honored, honestly, to be here with Jennifer Jones, who is such a powerhouse of inspiration. When we talk more about her story, you'll know exactly what I mean. I'm going to introduce her by saying, there was a quote on page 13 of her book that says, "We're put on this earth for a purpose. The purpose becomes revealed to us over a lifetime, and it's clear when we've chosen the right path because everything falls into place." And I thought, that is so profound. And then on page 16, it was, "Your vision was handmade for you. Build your inner voice and self-trust." She has done all of that. And when you hear this story and read this book, you'll know what I mean. I proudly introduce Jennifer Jones.
Be here with you. I feel honored and blessed to be in this environment with all of you. Thank you for being here tonight.
One of the things that I was really fascinated by was how you actually got into the Rockettes. The audition for it was something outside of Radio City Music Hall. Can you tell us about that?
Yes. So in 1987, early 1987, they were casting for two shows, the Super Bowl halftime show and the Cheetah Rivera tour. And I was studying at Broadway Dance Center. I was going to be a Broadway star. And one of my friends said, "Jennifer, you should go to the Rockette audition." I had no idea who the Rockettes were. My parents were big Broadway goers. They went to see Hair, Pippin with Ben Vereen, Jesus Christ Superstar, all those great shows. And they took my sister and I to see The Wiz 5 times. So I was focused on Broadway. So when she said I should go to this Rockette audition, I was very green in the business, very nervous at auditions, very intimidated, just knowing that I was still learning the ropes. I didn't know what was happening. So the morning of, I said, I need to go to this audition. And I got there at 10 o'clock and the line was draped around the music hall with the most beautiful ladies that I had ever seen. They knew how to do their hair, what costume, what to wear for the audition. And I got on the back of the line and I just looked at the line and I looked at my watch and I said, if I leave right now, I can make Frank Hatch's 11 o'clock jazz class. And I thought about leaving a couple of times, but then as I was about to walk off that line, a voice so strong, it almost pushed me back into the audition line and said, "Stay." And I did. And if I didn't stay on that audition line, I would never have made it to the Rockette line.
What was the audition like? What did you have to do?
Well, they took us in increments of maybe 12 ladies at a time. We would go into this small rehearsal hall where we would warm up, and the stage manager came in. He gave us a comp card, which is a card where you fill out your name, your address, your height, your weight, things like that. And then when he was ready to take us into the large hall where the choreographer was and the assistant, he said, "Well, I'm going to line you up, get in the order of how I call your name, bring your comp card, your picture and resume, and have your tap shoes in hand." All I had was my comp card. I did not have a picture and resume, and I didn't have my tap shoes, but I got in line. And the first thing that they do when you walk into the large hall is they take your height requirement, because if you don't make height, if you're too short or too tall, you're automatically cut. So I made height requirement, and then we did 2 audition numbers. One for Super Bowl 22, which was a typical Rockette number with kicks, high kicks. The second was for Cheetah Rivera, where we did more jump splits and fan kicks and things like that. And I completed the audition, and I was walking to the back of the room to pick up my bag, and the stage manager came up to me, and he said, "Jennifer, we're going to give you a call back. Bring your picture and resume, and bring your tap shoes."
Wow.
Yeah. A few days later, I went back. I had both. I had to go. I was living in New York at the time. I had to come back to New Jersey, find a printer, a computer to, write my resume, go to Kinko's, get copies. And then I went back to the audition, and I completed the second round.
Now, did they know you were Black?
I think so. A lot of people, think I'm Hispanic or Costa Rican, but they never asked me. So I think they did.
I mean, it seems so almost offhanded that you became the first African American or person of color to basically integrate the Rockettes, but it doesn't seem to have been an issue at the time that you auditioned.
I think at the time when I auditioned, they were actually looking for a Black woman. In the audition notice, the last line said, "Ethnic minorities encouraged to attend." But also, Radio City was getting a lot of heat. The Rockettes were getting a lot of heat from the NAACP. They were knocking on the door saying, "You're not an equal opportunity employer." Hazel N. Dukes was one of the major, people who was always after Radio City to integrate. So I think they were looking at the time to hire a Black woman.
And they did. So give me a little bit of history, because in the book you do talk about, I think it was 1925, the Rockettes were created, and it seemed to be created based on racism. I'm sorry to say that, but no African Americans or people of color were allowed to be on the stage with them?
Yes, so the Rockettes were founded in 1925 by Russell Market. But in 1925, Black people were not allowed to dance on the same stage as white people. So I think, back then, that was kind of the norm, the thought process. But that's why we had, fantastic companies now like Alvin Ailey, Dance Theater of Harlem, and, that's how those companies were built. But you would think in 1987, and in the backdrop of New York City, right, we would have a Black dancer by then. So Russell Market was still alive when I was put on the line, and from what I remember, he was not happy. Violet Holmes was the choreographer at the time, and he was like she was Russell's right hand, so he gifted her the line. And she was quoted in the New York Times, I believe in 1982 or 1983, that she said having one or two Black dancers on the line would distract, and you would lose the precision of the Rockettes, which is their hallmark. So there was still that antiquated thinking, even when I came on the line. And she said that in 1982 or 83. So even when I came on in 87, there were still, people who had that thought process.
When you use the word precision, that has always amazed me. How is that achieved with the Rockettes? I mean, to a pinky head turn.
Yes.
It's unbelievable.
It was my first big job, and so not only did I have to learn choreography, I had to learn the Rockette language, the precision of it, which is all the different arm angles, leg levels, head tilts, everything. So when I wasn't in the rehearsal hall learning all of that, I was in my kitchen or living room later that night until the next morning, And then I went back in the rehearsal hall and I had it, down pat pretty much, But it was a lot of work to learn how to break into 3 lines seamlessly.
How do you do that?
Guiding. You guide. So if we're in one line, you always guide to the right, and you're always guiding one lady over. So the lady on the end, she's making the track of how fast or how slow the line is going. And you're just guiding to the lady one away from you and making sure you're staying in line with her. Yes. That's a lot of work.
I mean, maintaining the choreography is enough, but maintaining the lines and the head turns and
Yes.
yes. Unbelievable. How many different, I hate using this word, but routines, so to speak, did they have?
Oh.
Like when you would do the Christmas show or...
Right. So in the Christmas show, we would do about 8 numbers. And so my first Christmas show, I had to, and the ladies that I came onto the line for were very seasoned. They had danced together for like 25 years. So when I came on the line to learn the Christmas show, I was one of the few who had to learn everything at a rapid pace because they all knew what they were doing. You know what I mean? So, but throughout the years, some numbers were taken out, new numbers were brought in. So they have a large repertoire of numbers.
How did you mention that they had been on a part of the Rockettes for a long time? How did they receive you?
That's a good question because there were some ladies and back office people, management people, who were ready for a black woman to come on the line. Like I said, it was like the Christmas show I did was 1987 to 1988, so, they were ready. But with change comes resistance, and some people stay comfortable, they like where they are, and they don't like change, and they made sure to let me know that I was not welcome. And, but it was my pure love of dance and being on a stage and wearing those costumes and red lips and the lashes and hearing that applause after a number. Oh, no one can take that away from me. No one was allowed.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. Well, you speak in the book about when you were a child, your parents took you to theater, and you were inspired by The Wiz.
Yes.
You were inspired by all the shows that they took you to, and you ultimately aspired to Broadway. And at some point along the way of being a Rockette, you auditioned for, I believe it was 42nd Street?
Yes.
And?
So the funny thing about that is that I was doing the Christmas show, and at the Christmas show, all of the Rockettes were auditioning for 42nd Street. And I would just go to my quick change, and they would hurry up and change, and then they would go out, in the wings before the number, and they would practice the routine that they learned at the audition, and then they would go out and do, the Christmas show. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna go do my show and then go home. So we did the George Bush inauguration, and I got a call on the way home from the casting director saying that, they would like me to come and audition for 42nd Street. They were doing an ethnic minority call for ladies to come in. And I went in and I auditioned. And again, I wasn't the most prepared. I did have my tap shoes, but I did not have a song ready. So for my song, I sang Happy Birthday.
I got the job.
They cast me the same day. I was about to pick up my bags and leave after the audition. They called me back in and they said, do you have your union card? And I said, no. And they said, well, you better go get one. And then I was part of a Broadway show.
Wow. You see why I read that first, we're put on this earth? It was her her vision, it's almost like what your seeds get planted and then they grow.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting that you mentioned in the book, I think it was about the Wiz and Stephanie Mills.
Yes.
And that moment solidified somewhere in your brain, and you said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be that. And everything that you've said, I'm going to do that, I'm going to be that, has come to fruition. What are you doing?
I think I do a lot of visualization. I remember when my kids were young, we were sitting out on the back porch and I had like this little toy slide and they were like playing on the slide. And it was before I got the Broadway show and I was going back into the Rockettes, going through my divorce, and I just sat on that back porch on this warm sunny day. And I just thought about The Lion King. The Lion King was like on Broadway forever, you know, and I was like, gosh, you know, I'd love to be in a show like that, 8 shows a week, you know, and just do something that I love to do. I know my kids would be so proud of me. And I just sat there envisioning what it would be like to be on Broadway and walking in and out of a backstage door. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I didn't know how I was going to get there, but visualization really works for me.
You did it. But on a darker side, you've had so much happen that's somewhat tragic, and I wonder what did you tap into to overcome? You had some health issues, you had challenges in your life in general. What did you tap into?
I think each challenge was different. Anything that I would tap into, there were several different things. I think with my health challenge, I'm a stage 3 colorectal cancer survivor. And with that, I really had to reevaluate my life and relationships. What was bringing me down, what relationships really weren't serving me, and I had to let go of some relationships and define what situations were important and were not important, and just let that go. Meditation became even more so, journaling, again, visualization, this time with light, a green light or a white light, fixing all of my cells. And I really leaned into my family and my boyfriend, now my husband at the time, and really, you know, took responsibility for what was happening and learning about my disease.
What did you learn about that?
I learned that being 50 years old, vegetarian at that time for over 25 years and active every day of my life, was something that was not contributing to my health, right? So I learned that for me, when I get stressed out, I was going through like a really, really stressful time in my life. I was holding a lot of that in my stomach, and I even know now if I get stressed out, like my stomach will hurt. And I'm like, Jen, you gotta like chill out. What is really bothering you? What is going on? So I learned more about myself. I've learned that colorectal cancer affects African American people 40% more because we don't have the resources. We don't have some trust in doctors. We don't have like the open conversations, but it is happening in younger and younger adults all over where we need to have these conversations.
You had a doctor that I read in the book who told you you were going to die. And you absolutely, I don't know how you did that, but you overcame that kind of unfortunate behavior. That's all I can describe it as. I know it was your sister, I believe, who told you to go, where to go to get the
Right.
best treatment. But when someone tells you something so mean-spirited, that's all I can say, what do you do to rise up and above that and press on? Because that's what you did.
Right. Yeah, my doctor told me I had 5 years to live. That was 6 years ago when I was first diagnosed. And I was embarrassed when she told me that. I was ashamed. I was considered the healthy one in my family. I didn't tell anyone, no one, for a month after she told me I had 5 years. I was going to get scans and blood work secretly. You know, I'd be on the phone with my mother and she's like, where are you going? I'm like, oh, I'm just running to the store. Like, nobody knew. And I believed my doctor. I was in the MRI just saying, am I gonna see my kids get married? Am I gonna know my grandchildren? And it wasn't until I sat my family down and told my sister, and she directed me to go to Memorial Sloan Kettering. And once I met with my doctors there, an almost all female surgical team and oncology team, did I feel almost healed, even before my first chemo treatment. I had to feel so comfortable with my doctors that I started to feel better and say, they said, this is gonna be a blip on the radar one day. And I was like, oh, I can beat this. But when my surgeon told me, she said, what did your doctor tell you about your cancer? And I said, he didn't tell me anything. And her mouth dropped. And she took out a pen and paper and she drew. She's like, this is where your cancer is and this is what we have to do. And then I was just like, oh, okay, now it all makes sense. And we all need to advocate that for ourselves and for our families. So that's when my healing actually started.
But do you realize how strong you had to be to even come up with that? To overcome all of that?
It's just a step-by-step process, and I am such a routine person. I get up and I exercise every day, I do my juicing every day. I'm very, very routine, and that was very helpful to me.
Well, you're an inspiration to all of us. I highly recommend the book, believe me. But I want you to talk a little bit about your family. You have 2 children, and every time you talk about them, you smile. And I know how proud you are of them, and they're adults now.
They're adults.
So can you tell us a little bit about them?
Yes, so they're always kids, and I always worry. So my son, he's 28 years old. He manages, a couple cheese shops here in New Jersey. And my daughter, she's 26, and she's living with her boyfriend, and she works in New York City, and she's like the New York girl, and she just loves everything.
It's truly amazing to be able to talk about grown children who are successful living on their own when you've gone through as much as you have gone through and come out on the plus side of your life. It's just amazing, really amazing. Again, I highly recommend this book. What I said to Jennifer earlier today, it's gonna be a movie. It is so fascinating, and to learn about the Rockettes, which we all know about and admire, I'm sure, and you can understand with her beauty and charm and body how she became a Rockette. But there's so much other heavy-duty stuff that's inspirational, that makes us want to keep on keeping on, knowing that we can rise above all the challenges. And Jennifer has gone through so many challenges. I think it's time to open the room for any questions that you may have.
You were the first. What is the current representation of African Americans American women or other minorities on the Rockettes. And you gotta tell me about that Jennifer doll. You just gotta tell me about it. Thank you.
So yes, thank you for your question. So the line is more diversified. I don't know the exact number of, Black women or Hispanic, Latina women. But I do know that Madison Square Garden is trying to diversify. Oh, right? They're trying, they say, but if you see the show, you can definitely see, there are women, Black women on the line, but, they're trying. Dancing Jen is a doll that I created. I created her to go with my children's book because I wanted children to have like a physical reminder to like walk around. If you can dream it, you can be it, and to have that inspiration. So she's available on Walmart Marketplace and Amazon, and she's just great. Thank you for that.
Okay, so I have a 4-year-old granddaughter who 2 weeks ago joined a little class where she gets to wear a tutu and have ribbons that go over her head, and she adores it. Adores it. So for both of you who have gone through it and taught it, tell me about that experience and where she can go from that, from what you know, from what you've gone through, and so many lovely children that you have taught.
They can go anywhere their heart desires.
I do tell her that.
What my belief is that certainly when you tap into a child's creativity and let them explore their possibilities through movement, because we are born, we crawl, we rock, we stand up, we start to walk, we start to run, then we start to dance. And when you start to dance, you feel a combination of, scientifically speaking, endorphins and all that stuff, but it's just pure joy. We jump for joy, we dance at our weddings, we dance as part of our society, our culture. And I said to Jennifer earlier, I said, I think the arts choose you. You don't choose it. Once it chooses you, you are stuck with it. You gotta dance. So once you do it, the discipline that comes from it and the passion that you find in your heart from doing it takes you to the next step. And as her journey has pointed out, you go from one thing to the other, and your life's journey and purpose is revealed to you. So I think just let them twirl those little ribbons, let them put on the tutu, let them jump around, and they'll be fine.
I just wanted to say hello. When I was in graduate school, 24 years ago, I went to Columbia and I was I went to the journalism school, and I had to do a master's project, and I can't even remember how it started, but my cousin was a Rockette, older than you, and me, but anyway, so I proposed that my radio project was going to be 75 years of the Rockettes, and it was, hearing you talk about some of the people like Violet and Russell, all, brought back a lot of memories. It's interesting because my cousin, there were a couple of things that she told me. One thing, I don't know if this held, when you were dancing, but she said that there were women who were, like their mothers had been Rockettes, yeah. Right? Yeah. Okay. And I wonder if we'll see that even in now with some of the Black dancers or Latina dancers, if that will happen. And then the other thing that Sandy used to say was, she once made a joke. She was like, I didn't need to work out. She's like, we did 4 shows a day, and that was enough. And I'm really curious if you could, you seem like someone who is very active and enjoys that, but
Yeah. At one point, we were doing 6 shows a day until they broke us into 2 casts. Yeah.
And were you only in, I'm sorry if I missed this, I walked in a few minutes late, were you only in New York or did you travel too?
Well, I was in New York, but I did travel with the 75th anniversary tour.
Okay.
I never did Christmas Across America, but there were shows outside of Radio City that we would do, but I was mostly based in New York.
My question is around, I've seen on social media that some black ballerinas have to stain their shoes before a show to make sure it's their skin tone, and I was wondering if you had any experience during your time on the Rockettes where things like weren't designed inclusively?
That's a good question because I did have to ask for skin tone tights. So it was not, we were not all put together as a black person. It wasn't until I asked and then the ladies after me kept asking and asking and asking. Now they have mesh in their costumes that are dyed to their skin tone. Their shoes match their tights, which is their skin tone. So now they're more put together, but when I first came on the line, that wasn't the case.
Hi,
Hi.
my name is Agnes Buchanan, and I was a dancer when I was younger, but what we did was Afro-Cuban dancing. And we would travel to Canada and do all the shows in the clubs in New York. And we did have a chance to, well, they went to Europe for 6 months, but I didn't go because it wasn't for me to go away from my family that long. But what I wanted to say was that this year I was watching the Christmas show where they have the Rockettes. And I said, when all the girls came out, I said, oh my God, she looks like me. And what I meant was, she stood out. She was almost as dark as I am. And I was totally surprised. So it was because of you that we have a more variety of the dancers that I just saw that particular day, and it made me feel very, very proud that you just don't have to be an Afro-Cuban dancer in order to make it. And I just want to say thank you.
Oh, thank you. That we have representation on the line and diversity so children can see themselves on the line, and we have families that go see these shows. That's so important.
Hi. So we all know the Rockettes from like November to January, but what's your contract like in terms of, do you dance with them all year? Is it only for that period of time? What do you do the rest of the year? And what's it like for a theatrical person? Like, what is your life like when you're not on stage as Rockette? Do you dance other places? Like, how does that work?
Well, I'm a retired Rockette, so it's different now than it was back
when
then.
you were.
Okay,
Yes.
yeah. So when I was a Rockette, like the Christmas show was our biggest season. So that was our moneymaker, where we would just like knuckle down before the two casts and make all, that money. Then there was the spring show one year, and then maybe the next year was they added like the Easter show. And then it was like kind of, jobs here and there. Some of the ladies, had other part-time jobs. Some ladies collected unemployment. I had an aerobic studio for a few years. Now, with social media, well, let me back up a minute. There was a roster of 36 women when I was there, which meant we had jobs to go to. We were, our jobs were secure. We had maternity leave. We had leave of absences. So I had my 2 children, and then I could go back on the line and dance, and I did not have to worry about having job security. When Jim Dolan came in and bought Radio City and the Rockettes, he broke the roster, which meant no more maternity leaves, no more leave of absences, and most of the ladies would have to re-audition every year. I believe there's a core amount of Rockettes now, maybe 10. I don't really know if they have health care benefits or maternity leaves or anything like that, but there is so much social media that they do that I think they're working a lot. a lot more than I did off season.
I had one question. You mentioned that you were auditioning for and then doing 42nd Street at the same time that you were part of the Rockette. How did that work?
I took a leave of absence to do 42nd Street, and that was during the time that Jim Dolan was breaking the roster. So I had a choice of whether going to the Rockettes and auditioning or having my steady job on 42nd Street. So I was just at that timeline.
Hi, thank you for this. This is so interesting, and you're both beautiful. I was wondering about the rehearsals, because it's such a limited amount of time, and particularly not only when you were dancing as a Rockette, but just for that moment in time in a year. How do you get the rehearsals in, and how long, especially when you have 6 shows in a day at a point?
Yeah, so the rehearsals were a lot, especially my first year when I was learning everything. But we would start rehearsals in October, and we usually opened like early November. So we would have about 4 weeks of rehearsal in the rehearsal hall, 3.5 weeks. Then we would go to the stage and do our tech rehearsal and our spacing, partial costumes, things like that. And then we would do a couple of run-throughs. And then we were open. So we were rehearsing 6 days a week, about 7 hours a day. So you just go in and you just learn everything, but when you love it, it's not work. You just love to be there in that rehearsal hall with the lines on the floors and the mirrors and the music. I didn't want to be anywhere else.
Well, it has been incredible for me. I feel so lucky to have gotten to meet you and to learn about your life and your beauty and all of the. I didn't know about the doll, by the way, so I want one for my grandchild.
Okay.
But thank you so much for joining us here. This is the book.
So we're going to have one last question.
Hello, thank you so much for being here. This was a real treat. Question. First of all, the domino effect of the Rockettes and the soldiers part. But the question is, was it always live music? Did you always have a live orchestra each show?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, the orchestra was a part of the show. The orchestra pit moved up on the stage and would move back and then down and then up and around. The orchestra was a part of the show, yes, and that's the beauty of it.
Did you always rehearse with them?
No, we had a pianist that in our rehearsals, and then when we went to the stage, there would be the orchestra. Maybe not everybody, but we would get a feel for the music. Yes.
Okay. I'd just like to give an ovation to both these lovely swans we have on our stage.